There comes a time in every business owner and entrepreneur's life when you begin to be tempted by
the good side.
And speaking of doing good, in today's video, we're going to be talking about establishing your own CRA registered charity in Canada and the absolute most fundamental test that needs to be met in order to acquire CRA registration. For those of you that are new to the channel, welcome. My name is Pam Matani. I am a business lawyer and the founder of Graphene Business Law, a law firm working exclusively with business owners and entrepreneurs like you throughout the province of Ontario, Canada. When it comes to registering a charity, thankfully that is a matter that is federally governed as opposed to being governed by the laws of a certain province or territory. So helping you with your charity application is something we can do even if you're a viewer outside of Ontario. Now, back to the regularly scheduled programming. Entering charity law was not something I had anticipated on doing when I started my own law shop over half a decade ago now. However, it's one of those things. I'm thankful to have very good clients, very good business owner, entrepreneur clients. And as they grow, I grow with them. And I noticed that over time, some of them would start to show interest. It would start with showing interest in a non-for-profit, which is very different than a charity. And then they would just want to go the whole 9 yards and register a charity and really do good through a dedicated organization, through a dedicated entity to doing good in whatever measure of charity they were trying to promote. Over time, thankfully, owing to my clients' interest and also my own interest in delivering the best service possible, charity law is something we have become very knowledgeable at here at Graphene, knowing the ins and outs of not just, the fundamental tests we're going to share in this video, for example, but the ins and outs of the different guidance pieces, policy pieces at the CRA, and really what the CRA is looking for every time they give me a call or send a letter on behalf of a client and they're asking for more. So that's exposed us to all the different circumstances, the different pushback you could receive, and just made us that much stronger at being able to defend your interests if you're looking to start a charity. Data on registering charities is a little blurry. As you could imagine, there is some gatekeeping there. But depending on the article or the data source you review, there's the failure rate for registering a charity with the CRA in Canada is 50 to 60%. Very, very high. I suspect owing to a lot of people, unfortunately, trying to do it on their own. So again, let's talk about the most fundamental test. This is one of the tests that if you don't have this, it's a definite non-starter. That's not to say though that there are not further tests required in successfully registering as a charity with the CRA. But the most fundamental test is going to pertain to having to do with the public, with at least some section of the public, and delivering a benefit to this section of the public that you're dealing with. So what are we talking about? What are we looking at when we talk about public? The biggest aspect of the public element of the test is that you are dealing with a clearly identifiable section of the public. So if you're putting forward a charity application having to do with, let's say, religious affiliations, helping individuals of Muslim faith, for example, you're not going to have then in your public meeting test that anybody that's hungry, anybody that's missing a limb can help. Because wait a second, I thought this application was oriented to the Muslim part of the public. So a clearly identifiable, coherent throughout your application part of the public. Needless to say, because we're talking about charity and doing good, a charitable application will not go through if it's clear in reading between the lines that we're actually dealing with a private sector or a private group of individuals. So back to the Muslim example, if your criteria for helping individuals, even though this application is being put forward for religious reasons, is individuals making above a certain amount of income, living in a certain zip code, things like that. Well, what does that have to do with prescribing to a certain religion? So it needs to be a clearly identifiable group of the public and really emphasizing the public part, publicly accessible and coherent with your application group of the public. Now the benefit part. The benefit part is perhaps a little easier to understand because we're talking about an objectively measurable benefit. It's not the case that doing something may or may not help a certain group. It's not the case that doing something requires a lot of work for this group to attain. It's the case that if you meet this threshold, the charity will help you by X amount of dollars. The charity will help you in getting a job, objective benefit. The charity will help you by putting food on your table, objective benefit. So that is the basic overall cannot proceed without passing test when it comes to registering a charity with the CRA. By way of bonus information in this video, how do we define charity? What does charity even mean? You'll be very interested to know, and this is where the lines start to be blurred a little bit. After you pass that initial level of the game, then the levels get more and more challenging, I would say, as a lawyer that works in charity law. And that's where doing it on your own, you're really going to be tripping up as opposed to working with a qualified lawyer. Now, so when it comes to defining charity law, there is no explicit definition.
Crazy.
And we have a lot of case law that we can pull out ideas of what charitable or charity law means. There is law in the Commonwealth jurisdictions dating back to like the 1600s titled the Statute of Charitable Uses that gives us ideas of what charity meant at the time. Again, helping provide food to individuals, helping individuals alleviate poverty, concepts like that. But that's not to say that the ideas of what can be considered charitable today are not ever expanding. The four big umbrellas for charity law, the four buckets that your charity must fit into, with the second door to be opened, or second level if you will, are charities for the purpose of advancing education, charities for the purpose of advancing religion, charities started for the relief of poverty, and the fourth bucket umbrella that a lot of my clients land in, because religion, education, and poverty, while super, impactful in today's society, are limiting nonetheless in terms of how ever evolving our needs are as a populace. So the fourth umbrella is going to be charity promoting activities that are overall beneficial to the community. And while this sounds fluffy, there are key charitable objectives that would fit under this category, including, for example, when we mention religion, education, and poverty, where's health in that? So key purposes like advancing physical health or advancing mental health are going to fit under that fourth umbrella of items beneficial to the community. So it's not like fluffland. We're not talking about, braiding the hair of three-legged dogs here. It's still super impactful and purposes with a lot of merit to them. It just so happens because the one concrete piece of legislation we have talking about charity law is hundreds of years old, and that piece covered so few concrete purposes that we've had to then group the rest under this fourth bucket. And there are a lot of different categories fitting under that fourth bucket, by the way. And if you're not sure, guess what? Speak to a lawyer. Give us a call, send us an email, info@graphenebusinesslaw.ca. I also always link our contacts in the description box down below, so you can rest assured there's always a way to reach out to us. I mentioned, as my last bonus piece of knowledge I'll throw out there, I mentioned earlier in this video the fact that non-for-profits and charities are super different, okay? Non-for-profits are still corporations. A non-for-profit corporation is a corporation. Non-for-profits, you can't give tax credits. Non-for-profits can exist for reasons that are not charitable at all. Meanwhile, charities, again, can only fit within those four buckets of purpose. The fourth one being something that could be socially beneficial to community that has not yet been identified even. So there's always, once we submit these applications to the CRA, there's always conversations to be had. There's always ways we can expand on the information we've provided. There's always a way to make your best case if you are super passionate about something. Some of our viewers start a charity as the first and only thing they ever do in their life because that passion is so all-consuming for them. Other of our charity starting viewers or clients will be starting a charity at the point in their career where they have filled their pockets, they're happy, they provided for themselves, their families, their circles, and now they feel it's time for them to give back. Whatever end of the spectrum of experience, sophistication, lifestyle, business experience you're in. At Graphene, we can only ever help take the stress off your shoulders, take the mystery and the heavy weight of all these convoluted sources of information off your plate and make it a linear process for you and work through it together. So thanks again for watching this video. We post content that is helpful to business owners and entrepreneurs weekly here on Graphene Business Law. And again, with charity being a matter that is federally regulated, you can reach out to us from anywhere in Canada. Our website is graphenebusinesslaw.ca and our email is info@graphenebusinesslaw.ca. You can email us anytime and we'll move forward with the first step, which is a free consult. Thank you for watching.